Ayin Beis, Volume 1. We're up to Discourse number 24. Omed Aleim Parsha Vayera, 100 years ago. Chapter 91, Tzadik Aleph, and page Kuf Ayin Hey, 175. This new discourse, the Friedrich Rebbe sums it up by saying, Sefirah, sippur v'Haggadah, which is the second interpretation in what a Sefirah is. Sippur, a narrative and a story. So, to sum up where we're at, we finished 9 chapters discussing the first interpretation of Sefirah, and that is from the word sippur, mispar, number. And in a rather elaborate fashion, the Rebbe Rashab went through different aspects of number. And briefly, they all are part of understanding the interface, Sefirahs being the interface between the divine and existence. And specifically, number has one side, it defines structure, it defines the fundamental and inherent measure of this universe. Everything has everything is a distinct entity, distinguished from everything else around it. That's one end of number. Then there's the other end of number that signifies magnitude, quality. And it all is a matter, of course, of perspective. So initially, we discussed that this is the difference between what we call mispar ha'eres and mispar hakelim. And mispar ha'eres is quality. The higher you go, the greater the number, not number in division, mischalkus, but number as in greater quality, more abundance, more intensity. The lower you go, the intensity gets diminished. When it comes to kelim, when you talk about expression, like letters, as opposed to thought, as opposed to ideas, the further down you go, the more you have, the more it breaks down into details. Now, in Atzilus, mispar and mispar kelim are aligned, and each has their role. One defines the structure, one is the energy. Eir reveals the Kayach HaGvul of Ein Sof. What is the Kayach HaGvul? We're talking about the Eir HaGvul. The energy, the God's energy invested in creating something that is that has structure. But as he goes further into the explanation, he's using the shalah, es shadar kelimnes, and kol shadar kelimnes from the Gemara, that es and kol refer to something that is one that you see revealed in a very clear way, a number that signifies the value, chshivus, of each individual. Explained, for example, Ishlei Nedar. We see this in Shvar Shamayim, in the heavenly celestial bodies, where they are kayomim beish, means each individual does not die. You see in a revealed way, very open, apparent way, the value of each entity because of the divine Ein Sof, the divine infinite power invested in it. And we see it even more so in souls, which is why we count. Why in the Torah we count. On the other hand, we have a count that's a negative. As the Shalah asks the question, we see that the Gemara says, the Talmud says, that time of counting, things that are counted don't have, the blessing doesn't dwell there. Blessing dwells in the thing that isn't counted. And he explains that's when you talk about counting in Elam Hazah, which means raw numbers, so to speak. Raw, selfish numbers that focus on the distinction and focus on the separation between things. So there, number is not considered a positive. Counting is not positive. But then there's mispar ne'elam haba, as he puts it, which is the hasag of the souls as they climb level to level and appreciating the different levels. There, it goes infinite. It's not about finite. It's about quality, and it's still, however, comprehension. So it's level by level by level. They have no rest. They continue to travel. So it's a journey on levels, but it's the levels that go on. And he explains it in 2 ways. You could say this mispar elam haba, spiritual number, is the kelim, the containers, because even the containers of Atzilus are also revealing the divine power of the structure now, not the energy within the structure. So therefore, the Kalim too are part of what Atzilus is, this Chesed, Gvura, the structure. But each one is infinite. And the limitation is only in the flow outward. Or you can say, he says, the second way you can say is that it goes on the Eiris, is the number of the energies. That's what mispar Elam Haba is. And through the Aveda, through the work of a person, through Torah and Shuvah, as he puts it, we're able to draw down beyond number into number. In other words, the power of the infinite into the finite structure of existence. And then finally, concludes, why do we call it Koil? Koil is seemingly a positive thing. Koil Shadakim is here. It seems Koil is referring to the number in this world, and the raw numbers of the material world. So he explains that Koil includes everything. Includes all types of transmissions, including those that go even to negative forces, where they too have some awareness. And the point is that we should have S, which is from the word bittul, that it should be complete subjugation, and then a person is able to even transform the kalim, which diminish the energy, to the point that down here below it can even flow to the wrong places, even to negative forces, and transform that into lo yisafir, into a place which is completely divine. And this is the difference between mispar HaKelim, the difference between the work of the Nefesh HaLekis, the divine soul, and then there's the work of the animal soul. The divine soul focuses primarily on the energies. It connects to the energy in a revealed way. Limsa Nafsh Bechad. And the Nefesh HaBamis, the animal soul, its work is transforming the crassness of this world. And he explained that's the two things in Tzer Tasla Teva, the two different interpretations, whether it means window, which is referring to the work of tzaddikim, or he's talking about an Evan which is referring of transforming the letters of Teva, the words and letters through prayer, transforming it in a way that it becomes an Evan a sparkling, a shining, a glowing letters, words, brilliant, to the point of tzarayim that it actually becomes literally like daylight. So it reaches the highest levels. So the kelim themselves become a keli for the energy, and even for the energy that's even higher than the containers. With this is the summary of Sefirah from number. Now he's climbing to the next step, which is Sefirah from the word sippur and Haggadah. Sippur. So the same words, mispar, sefer, samach pei reish, can be in the meaning number. Now we're going to go to the second interpretation, which is a sippur, telling a story. And clearly he's climbing from the bottom up. In other words, mispar, even though mispar 2 we spoke two sides, now we tell the story. Let's see what's the story behind the story. Okay. So now page 175. Omed aleim, Discourse 24. Omed aleim tachas ha'etz v'yechlu. This is talking about Avram Avinu, when he greets the guests, who he thought were nomads, and he offers them a meal and so on. So it says, Omed aleim, Abraham stood above them, tachas ha'etz, beneath the tree, v'yechlu, and they ate the meal that he provided for them. V'yisa b'Gemara Kedushin Daf Lamed Beis Omed Beis. The Gemara in Kedushin, Talmud in Kedushin on page 32b says, Maise b'Rabbi Elazar v'Rabbi Yehuda. I think it's Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yehuda, v'Rab Tzadik, probably. What's the story? Shahi Mesubim b'Mishta b'Noi Shel Rabban Gamliel. That they gathered at a party for the son of Rabban Gamliel. V'hoye Rabban Gamliel eimedu mashke. And Rabban Gamliel was standing as the host. He was standing and was pouring them mashke, giving them drinks. Omer Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yitzchak, or Rabbi Yehuda, we'll find out in a moment. Eliezer, okay. I said that. No, did I say that? Yeah. Yeshua it says? Yeah. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Tzadik. Okay, Tzadik. Yeah. So Omer Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yeshua. Says Rabbi Lazar, Malacha Yeshua. Oh, it says here, Yeshua, Shanachnu Yeshrim, V'ram Gamliel Omed. What is this? What kind of behavior is this? That we're sitting and he's standing. Not a sign of respect. V'heshiv lei, and Rabbi Yeshua answered to Rabbi Lazar, M'masha kosev gabi Avram Avinu shel Avram Avinu olav Hashem who Omed aleim. He brings a proof. Yeah, that's how it is. The host stands. Avram stood above them, stood upon them, stood. So in other words, he's saying l'chayr, it's seemingly not an appropriate thing. He's standing, we're sitting. So he said, we see the same thing by Avram. Mashma mizeh, says the Rebbe Rashab, from this appears, shamida masha emed mishamash hu inyan b'fnei atzmi levad masha meichel mashka. That standing itself is something separate from being the one that is the host that is feeding and giving drinks. So therefore, with the kindness that Avram bestowed and did with the angels, Ayin Beis were two things. The levad masha yichilam, besides the fact that he fed them, there's another thing that he stood above them, which is like a separate thing. Why is a mashma from the Gemara like that? No, because
could have said, I have a green mashka machem. That's what he could have said.
Yeah, no, but the point being here is that what bothered him was not that he's feeding us. He's the host. We shouldn't be feeding him. This is his house. That's where the party is. That he was standing and we're sitting. In other words, not just that there's something about the standing part. His answer, what did he answer? He didn't answer we should be feeding him. He answered that there's something about the host standing, so to speak. So you could say it's inevitable. How else can you feed someone unless you stand? But it's just like that, in other words, what bothered him was more that he's. How could we be sitting in the presence of, like you don't sit when your Rabbi or your teacher is standing. Was he their teacher? I don't know if he's their teacher, but he may be their superior. Yeah. So I mean that's what it appears. That Omed is the issue here. We have to understand what are these two things: the feeding and the standing. We also have to understand what does it mean tachas eitz, seemingly superfluous, extra. They stood beneath the tree. It already says v'yishanu, and we will lean or rest under the tree. So it could have said, Omed aleim, and that's it. What the Eifel says, tachas eitz. V'hav aleim kan, hu Omed aleim v'yechlu. Could have said here, he stood above them, stood atop them, or stood beside them, and fed them. Why does it repeat a second time, redundant, beneath the tree? By the way, this pasuk we already learned, if you remember the Maimer of Sukkos. Repeat. The Sukkos Maimer, he talked about tachas eitz with Sukkah. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, because it brings also this raya from the schus Avram standing, that's why. But he spoke Sukkah tachas ha'ilan, it is not, so he spoke, yeah. Right, this was a few Maimorim back. To understand all this, we have to preface what we discussed earlier, the Shem Sefirah Lashon mispar. That the word Sefirah, the name Sefirah, is from the word mispar. And it was explained, Shu b'chinas hakelim. The mispar hu agbola the shach b'chinas hakelim. Explained that number is primarily in containers, because number, which is hakbola, as the Pardes says, numbers denotes structure. Number denotes parameters, measure, count, weight, size. That's what numbers are. Actually, I think all those above are correct. Weight, size, they're all about numbers. We live in a world of numbers. The shayach b'bchinas hakelim, that is possible in the kelim. The containers are what define the size, the measure, the parameters. Oli is the mispar in his chachos, because mispar is not a new thing, as we discussed. Mispar only reveals the number of something that was there already before. It doesn't create it. Kim Gilei Helam, it's only a revelation of the concealed. Who became that Atzilus. Shem B'chinas Gilei Helam. So number is in the containers of Atzilus, which is revealing the concealed power of numbers that was there, the power of the finite that was there before. V'nizbair, I also explained, the Ikri mispar hu agbolos davar, shahu agbolos davar hu b'chinas malchus. And the end number itself, and the kelim itself, the primary place where numbers manifest is in the state and level of malchus. Remember the two parts. One part is that the first part is that he brought was mispar in general is the finite aspect of the spheres, which are the containers, as he explained. And then the next chapter he brought the part is a mispar hayomim. That specifically it's malchus, because the malchus is the primary place of of containers. Well, the mailam ha malchus, and higher than malchus, ein shayich mispar shehu agbala, and higher than malchus you cannot say mispar, which is defined. Ki'im mispar eres. There, when you say number, you say the 9 spheres above, which also are numbered. They're 9, or six midas, and so on. There we're focusing on mispar eres, which is really the magnitude, the quality of the energy, rather than the structure and definition of the measure and size and so on. So when you look at something, you can say, what are we focusing on? Are we talking about its quality, or are we talking about its parameters? Like a little like muhus and mitzias in a way. Muhus, you talk about a muhus of something, you talk more it's like more of the eir. Mitzias, you describe its parameters, its definitions. And that's the level. This is a number that's not countable, or it's a number that's endless. So it's a combination of two things. It's not beyond number, period. It's in the world of numbers. That's why you say Yisafir. You say mispar shalei Yisafir.
I'm sorry, but could you just repeat? So what's he going to do? Mispar shalei Yisafir.
We talked about it for hours.
I know. Just if
what's the question?
Just what is the base, the primitive, like one sentence? Lo Yisafir means as mir red wegen Chochma und nicht wegen Chesed?
No, that's mispar. Mispar is structure. There's Chachma, there's Bina, Chesed, and Gvura. That's a structure. The question is, does this structure a limited one, or quality-wise, it has infinite power? It extends forever. Chesed. Ein Sofli is Pashtuse.
So who is the mispar
though? That's Chesed, and not Gvura. So there's a structure, there's a number. There's a number 10 spheres. It's not 11 spheres. It's not 12 spheres. It's not 9. It's basically going back to, the reason I say I elaborated, because I didn't just discuss this line. It's the whole context. That when you look at the structure of the universe, is it a limited structure? Is it the Keich HaGvul of Ein Sof is Bli Gvul. It's God's infinite power to express Himself in a finite way. If you're able to see the world from that perspective, then the finite is beyond finite. So we don't see it that way. We only see the limitations. We don't see the so-called Koyach HaMesaper in the mispar.
That to draw the infinite into the finite.
That helps. Great. Yeah. So this is mispar shalei Yisafir. He gave all the examples. They climb levels, but it's an infinite journey. The goal here is not to get to the infinite and ignore and annihilate the finite. The goal is not to be trapped in the finite. So how do we take a world that is so defined by multifarious multiplicity and within it experience that which is beyond? That's the challenge. That's why we have the Sefirah in the first place. Because God can do anything. We're talking about our perspective. We could do it. Yeah, correct. There's the din where Hametzi Eichel B'teich Kli and Shabbos, right? So you go according to the Eichel, not according to the Kli. Right? Even though the Keli B'ferish can be a size that's Usr. Why? Because there it's bottled, because the whole purpose of it is not the different reasons, and it's Legufa. So you have something where quantity is completely sublimated to the quality. And the quality is less than the shear, you're not even Midaraisa at least. It's an example. So the same thing is in everything in life. You can be focusing on the pure weight or measure or size, or you could be focusing on the divine within it. And when you could focus on the divine, it becomes like Prozes Teshav Yerushalayim. And even though it has a structure, you go beyond structure, within the structure. Okay.
Mathematical infinity.
Yeah, but mathematical...
Number of dots.
I wouldn't go with mathematics here, because it's going to be hard to combine infinity and finite and infinite. In mathematics, there are similarities to what we're discussing here. There's the finite set of numbers, infinite set of numbers, but they don't usually meet. I mean, how does that help you? I don't think mathematics will help. I think it'll be the opposite. Aveda will help. The only way is through Aveda to understand this. You cannot understand this with logic. Because logic, finite is not infinite. It's only through Aveda. When you say, Les machshava trisa beklal, but you tough is berusa deliba.
You can take it with...
Yeah.
It's basically the Kelim are finite and the Eidos are infinite, and they have to meet together.
It's more complicated, because if Kelim themselves, depends which Kelim. In Atzilus is one thing, and lower than Atzilus, and so on.
Finite is just a state of our mind.
But God created a finite world. He wants it, so it's not just a state of mind, it's not an illusion. It's explained that this is the thing of Es Shadar Kelimnes, which means every individual thing being counted because of its unique individual value. For Kol Shadar Kelimnes is something that can be counted or cannot be counted. It can also not, it doesn't have the same type of individual qualitative value. So mispar is not because each individual is unique, is distinct, is because of the quality of what we're talking about. So therefore, every detail matters. Whereas in the world of Kalim, you could sell something more by volume or by weight, because every individual is not as you don't recognize the quality of each individual entity. But technically, you could say in Kalim there's actually more numbers if you speak from the perspective of distinction. In other words, in Kol Shadar Kelimnes, you could be selling somebody many more details, except it doesn't have the same type of individual value, qualitative value. So you could have a lot more quantity in Kol Shadar Kelimnes than in Es Shadar Kelimnes. Like, in Es Shadar Kelimnes, let's say you sell somebody 5 diamonds or 5 valuable things. You count it, he pays for it per item. In Kol, you'll sell somebody, listen, take this, a ton of scrap. So in Kalim is more numbers, but in quality it's less. I'm just pointing out what he means here, because you could say, if S means everything counted, Kalim, you also count each one. But Kalim focuses more on the structure of it, as opposed to the qualitative value, relatively speaking.
You're not focusing on the...
I gave many examples. Another example, for example, when you read a book or a Sefer. So there's letters and words, as we spoke, words of prayer. And then there's the idea. When you get immersed, you get engrossed in a book, you don't even realize the words you're reading. Someone said, how many words did you read? I said, I didn't even look at the words. I was reading the idea. Good reading is such that you get so absorbed that you just hear the ideas coming to you. Then you say, I want to see the style, how he wrote it. Then you say, okay, let me see a paragraph in this. You ever read? You don't start counting how many paragraphs are there, how many words, lines, because the words are like I said, like Hametzi Eichel Pachas Mikashir. That focus there is on the energy, on the message. If you're absorbed, someone speaking to you or someone singing a song, you get so lifted by the song and transported by it, you don't focus on the details. Then you want to go break down the details. Yes, there's musical notes and so on. So when things are perfectly aligned, Kelim and Neiros work perfectly together. On the other hand, if the guy didn't have words, or the musician wasn't playing notes, you wouldn't hear anything. So it's clearly Gvul. There's a structure, but what are you emphasizing? What are you experiencing? With what's within the structure or the structure itself? Just to take it one step further, someone listens to music, let's say a song that touches them. The song clearly has a beginning and an end. 3-minute song, 10-minute song, 20-minute song, doesn't matter. Each note has structure. And what does it do to you in quality? It can change your whole life. A 5-minute nigun can touch a person in a bleak, vuldic way. Just give me examples of mispar shalei yisafir. So if someone will say, how can I do that? It's 5 minutes. I say, yeah, well, it's not 5 minutes of driving on a train. It's 5 minutes of magic. It's 5 minutes of something that's divine. So you could have the same. It has structure, but the emphasis on it is on the Eidos. Just remember, however, that there's also a middle step. There's the Kelim of Atzilus and there's Kelim in Biyah. Like that same song in Atzilus, the focus is two things. There's the energy of the song, there's the structure of the song. After Atzilus, the structure becomes much more powerful and you don't even hear the song so much, or you don't hear it at all. To the point there can be even a distortion. That's like someone singing out of tune. So the same song, suddenly, instead of lifting you up to Bli Gvul, is grating on your nerves.
Why is it called?
Soda.
Why is it called Es? Why do you call Eidos Es Shadaki? Alamo?
No. Again, we discussed it in detail. Did you read the chapter? Okay, listen, I'm not going to go over every detail again. Look at the last chapter. He said a bunch of things. Es in Gemara is you count every individual, the value, quality, chshivus. The whole mimer is about chshivus. And secondly, Es is from the word bittel. It's bottle. Yirus Hashem. Es Hashem. By the way, some Maimonim talks this. That's the meaning of what's the pasuk that he brings? Kisisa es reish b'nei Yisrael. That es is the same as Kisisa. That's the positive counting. Es shadav kelimnes. Okay. And finally, he says, and we learned that through Teira and Tshuva you draw down the level of lay mispar and mispar, beyond number into number, beyond measure into measure, into parameters. That even the number of Elam Hazeh should also be in a state of beyond number. So here too, what does Tshuva do, for example? Right? A person is immersed in Elam Hazeh in the worst possible way, Chumrius. In mispar, raw, selfish, narcissistic numbers. Okay? And then he does tshuva. What he's doing is a qualitative thing. He's revealing, he's transforming that state into a state that is connecting to Elokus. So he's taking the darkness and turning it into light, which is like he says in Tanya, that it's specifically a person. Not why is Danis not like Kazachias? Because of like a thirsty person in the desert. Because of his thirst, that motivates him and propels him to have far more intense connection. So there you go. How mispar brings you to lay mispar. Listen, dilug yasher. Okay. Now begins interpretation 2 in Sefirah. Tzadik Aleph, and this goes till, I think it's like 11 chapters. This is till Kuv Dalet. So it's 13 chapters to be precise.
So if you only had one item, could that be counted as counting?
I don't know. Is that semantics? Who cares?
We're so interested
Yeah, you could say that. When you say Chad v'lei b'chushban, God is one. But it's beyond number. It depends. There's echad and there's yachid. It depends if you're counting the one as a count or you're saying oneness. If it's oneness, then it could be beyond any number. So it's the oneness of something. It's the pshittus, shapelessness. It all depends what the situation is. You say Hashem echad, you could say God is one and not many. You could say He's oneness, and that's beyond even one. So now we're going from chapter 91 till chapter 104, or 103 to be precise. Essentially, it's 13 chapters. Is Pirush Beis in Sefirah. Pirush Beis b'Sefirah u'loshen sippur v'agod. And the second meaning in Sefirah is from the word sippur, story, Haggadah, narrative. I think sippur and Haggadah, I don't know if there are differences between the two. But that's what he calls it. Kamesha Kosav HaPardes Sham. Which Pardes? He's going back to the same Pardes that he began, which is in chapter 83. So what do you say there? I'm sorry, 83, yeah. So the Pardes, which was Shar Ches Perek Beis, he said, I'm talking back to page 159. So he's referring back to page 159. So what does he say there? There he said, the Pardes says, Kama Perushim. And the first one, Ha'al of Loshen mispar. Now he's going Habeis. So he's referring, B'Shem Harab Shem Tov. Shem Tov was a Makubal in the Middle Ages. Rizel Shene. Shem Tov, yeah. Oh, no, it's not Adam Baal Shem Tov. Shem Tov is a Makubal that's brought in different places. He's from the Middle Ages, the time of the Ramban, I think.
So Shem Tov is a common name for Makubal?
Yeah, you have Shem Tov. There's also a Shem Tov, I believe, that is a commentary on Meir Nevuchim. It was a name. It means, a good name. That's what it means.
They weren't named that. They got that name because they acquired it.
Yeah, in those days there wasn't family names yet. It's more of a Shem HaKinui. Yeah. Shivzel Shene. And this is the expression, this is the language. This is the language of the language of the Zelashene of the Pardes. But Boyer Matzasi in the Sefer HaBoyer I found Sefer HaBoyer, some say it's Nechuni ben Akana. In time of the Zohar, there were the same period of the Zohar. There were two other Sifrei Kabbalah, Sefer HaBoyer and Sefer HaKana. So Sefer HaKana, Rabbi Nechuni ben Akana. So Sefer HaBoyer, which actually means the same word like Zohar. Boyer means brilliance, shining. Some was attributed to Rabbi Nechuni ben Akana. Sefer HaBoyer, there was Sefer HaKana. There's also Sefer HaTmuna, I should add. These are the earliest Kabbalistic works. If you want a list of them, I once made a whole bibliography of all Kabbalistic works from the earliest.
Look, it says over there, Amram Midas HaChesed, like Kadosh Baruch Hu.
Yeah, the Sefer Chassidus brings different places. Huh?
I remember saying things that the Midas HaChesed spoke to the Kadosh Baruch Hu.
Yeah. It's like a medrash. It's a medrash al pi Kabbalah. I mean, it's like Zohar. Very similar to Zohar. Aryeh Kaplan has an excellent translation of Boyer with a great introduction. He brings there all the different opinions of who wrote it. Momashon Nechuni ben Akana is what the consensus is. So V'zel Shene b'Boyer. V'zel Shene. B'Boyer Matzasi, I found in the Boyer. So this is the Pardes writing, Ramak, Moshe Kardavira writing in the name of Rosh Shem Tov. Amai Ikra Sefirah. Why are they called Sefirah? Mishum Hashamayim Mesaprin Kveid Kel. From the expression, the heavens are telling Kveid Kel, the glory of God. This is all still the language of this. Vakavona. The meaning of this is Kamoisha Hadibur Vahamichtiv. Just like words and writings. When you speak, speech and the written word. Yevayel Bahagbalosei. Lias Murgish Hadvorim Hanelam Meteich Makshavas Achochem. This is so just like words that you speak or you write. Explain, Yevayel Bahagbalosei. Through their confinement, like I said before with the music, through their confined parameters. Liyas murgish advarim and elamim. That the things that there should be, we should have a sense of the things that were concealed in the thought of the Chacham. Kein Hashemayim, the same thing heavens, Meirim al Hashem Yisborach. Same thing heavens tell us the story of God. That's how he explains. What's the word misaprim? What do you mean Hamsham Misayim Samam? They're telling the story.
Heavens are the spheres.
No. Spheres are, no. He didn't say heavens are the spheres. It's a pasuk. Hashemayim misaprim kavod keil. We say it in David. The heavens tell us the story of God's glory. So he gave it. So he's saying, just like what means telling a story, just like when somebody speaks or writes. So in this finite instrument or finite channel, they're expressing, giving us a taste, a sense of the things that are concealed in the thought of the Chacham. Actually, it's probably the Chacham's Dibur HaMichtav, to be honest. It's probably the Chacham's Dibur. Same to the heavens. The heavens are a finite entity. You look up in the heavens, what are they? Skies. They too are telling us a story of something that's concealed within the divine, basically. And this is the Sefirah. Shekein HaSefirah, it's a muscle for the Sefirah. Shekein HaSefirah, he megalas hamachshavas hanelamas. And so this, because here the Sefirah, they reveal the hidden thoughts. So yes, Shamayim here is a muscle for the Sefirah, if you want to put it that way.
Right, here it says Beinim al Hashem Yisbarach. Ken Hashemayim Beinim al Hashem Yisbarach.
Right, Shekein HaSefirah, he megalas hamachshavas hanelamas. What are you saying? I mean,
I'm saying he's not.
it's not a contradiction. He's just elaborating. Why is Sefirah called Sefirah? So he says it comes from the word misaprim, Hashemayim misaprim. So heavens tell the story of the divine, the same thing the spheres. Basically, that's what he's saying.
But the heaven is the one that's telling the story. It's like the book. It's like the writing and the
And so the Sefirah to that.
He says Beinim al Hashem Yisbarach.
Right, and then he continues.
It's not really Hashem Yisbarach. The Shemayim is the book. It's the.
But what are they telling? What story? Kavod keil they're telling us.
Right.
So, what's the problem? I don't understand what the problem is.
Shemayim Beinim al Hashem Yisbarach.
Hashem Yisbarach is Kavod keil. That's keil. It's Hashem Yisbarach.
Beinim means telling us about Hashem Yisbarach.
Exactly.
Not, okay. Not what it is. Directs us towards Hashem Yisbarach.
Okay, so this is all what the Rav Shem Tov said, that the Pardes cites. Because of a Pardes Alzeh, now the Pardes goes and explains it, discusses it. So what do we have? The Rav Shem Tov cited the Sefirah HaBoyer, but the Pardes is citing the Shem Tov, basically. Rav Shem Tov. Because of a Pardes Alzeh, and the Pardes writes on the Sefirah, Misapris, that the spheres, Misapris, they tell, Umagbilis, es habilti mugbal. They reveal, they relate, and they limit, Magbilis, that which is beyond limit. Habilti mugbal. That's what the Pardes says. The Pardes adds this expression. Because of course that's the key word here, Magbalose. So here we have again an interface between Gvul and Bli Gvul. Obviously, this is clearly on a different level than what we discussed before with numbers. So let's see where it goes now. So it continues. The Inyan in this is the Kamoisha Dibur Hu Gili HaMachshava, just like speech. Like he used the word speech, Dibur. Is Gili HaMachshava reveals the thought, Shemachshava Hi Behelam. Because thought is concealed. When a person is thinking, we have no idea what he's thinking. And speech reveals that which is concealed in the thought. The concealment within the thought. As it's known in what it says, my honor barasiv yitzartiv. Then it says afasisiv, so it says beriya the barasiv yitzartiv beriya b'chinas cheshach v'helam. The first level is Bria, is a Cheshach and Helam. It's darkness and concealed. V'Yetzira b'chinas Gileah Helam de Bria. And Yetzira reveals the concealed within Bria. Shamachshava she'b'chinas Bria, thought, which is the level of Bria, of creation. We're talking about the worlds. So you have Atzilus, you have Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. Here he's focusing on Bria and Yetzira. Shamachshava, Bria is Machshava, Yetzira is Dibur, and Asiya will be Maisa. But he's talking about the first two. Shemachshava she'b'chinas Bria, thought, which is the state of Bria, he'b'chinas Helam adayin. It's still in a state of concealment. V'nikra beira cheshach. That's why we say beira cheshach in Yetzer Eir. Because Bria is cheshach. Bria is still a shape, a form without a shape. So it's concealed, like Machshava. It's there, but it's concealed, like dark. V'sibas hahelam the machshava. Why is it? What's the cause of this concealment in the machshava? Because though there are aces there, because you're thinking, so it clearly has some parameters, but the letters there don't yet have any substance. They're not defined. So basically, what dominates there is the energy, is the idea. So even though there are letters there, but they're not yet of substance, substantive, in a way that from that can be a revelation should reveal it to another. It's an interesting way he puts it. You'd usually say, why is Machshava concealed? Because it's you yourself, it's to you. So you're not telling it yet to somebody. But he's going deeper than that. He's saying, not only, even if you want to reveal it, you can't reveal it. You have to limit it to reveal it, because the machshava, the intensity of the idea is what dominates, and letters are not there yet. And to speak to Azulas, you need to, sometimes, for example, what's a shikr, or not a shikr, somebody's a brilliant person, and he's so much involved, I did the Torah, lemivla lepolit. He's so busy concentrating on his idea, he can't speak then. If you ask him to speak then, he's going to say something that won't make sense. Because machshava would dominate, so there's issues there, but they're not substantive yet in the way and distinct that can be revealed to Azulas. And in Dibur the letters become distinct and substantial. To the point that they can be felt and sensed by Azulas. Again he says murgash, which is the word that the Rab Shem Tov used. This murgash hadvarim. And now, even though it's a diminished state, but what is Dibur revealing? Only what is concealed in the thought. Nothing new. And the concealment in the thought, that itself is literally being revealed in the speech. Same thing with Sefirah of Atzilus. The 10 spheres of Atzilus, which are containers. Hey, megalim helama eres alyenim shebilti hakelim hare eres mitzatzad smloyia b'chinas amshach aloi b'chinas izgalus. So even though he's using the word bria, we have to understand this is bria within Atzilus. So kelim of Atzilus, which is the primary thing of the 10 spheres, even though we know that spheres are also an energy, but the focus here is on the kelim. So what do the kelim of Atzilus do? They reveal what is concealed in the higher energies, that without the containers, like without the letters, the words of dibur, of speech, those energies would not be in a state of transmission and would not be revealed. And through these containers, they're drawn down and revealed below. Okay. Now, of course, you could ask the immediate question: how is this different than what he said earlier? That Kalim as number do the same thing. A number also reveals that which was there before. So we'll leave that on the table because that's clearly going to be discussed. Because clearly it's not just a redundant interpretation. Telling a story, misaprim is not sippur, is not mispar. Mispar is clearly more concealed. But it's interesting just the parallel that it's a very similar idea, that revealing something that was there before. V'inyan, and the inyan in this is the Yidua, the Teva, Eretz Shuliyas, b'chinas Istalkus L'mayla. Explaining now why Kalim do this. Because it's known, the nature of energies, of light, is to continuously be drawn and expire upward. Look at a flame. If there was no wick, it would just disappear. Like, for example, in the faculties of the soul. On Neroim, we see, every faculty and energy that is a higher level is in a more concealed and a more ascending state. And everything that's in a lower level is in a state of revelation and transmission.
Higher,
drawing down.
I mean more refined and less refined.
Yeah. Like he means intellect. Let's say intellect compared to action.
It's more refined.
I don't know if he's going to give an example. Yeah, he will. Yeah, but my example is immediately I would take the two extremes: to throw a stone, or just to do something with your hands, and sublime thought. So clearly, one is more salmas v'aliyah, and the other one is expression and revelation. So these words you should memorize: his salmas v'aliyah and his galas v'amshacha, because these define two different states, opposite states. Like an intelligence, he's giving an example for the keiches hanefesh, which is an example for the nature of Eir compared to Keli. So what do we say b'seichel midas? Cognitive and emotional skills, or the mind and the heart. Midas, emotions, feelings, are in a state of yitzia, of extroversion, going outward. These galus and revelation. Basically, expression. Yeah, expression. That's good. When he says it can't be bisalmas, doesn't mean that they don't have a root. But midas, by definition, emotions, feelings, cannot be concealed. Their whole idea, their whole nature is expression. Because it's an awakening and an excitement about any particular thing. By definition, that is a form of expression. You can control it, but that's what a midah means. If you look at something and you're neutral to it, there's no midah aroused. If you're drawn to it, whether you act on it is another story, but we're talking about whether your heart is drawn to it, is by definition a yitzia. It's the nature of an emotion. Or if you're repelled by it, there's also yitzia. It's some type of sensation. If you ignore it or you're oblivious, then clearly there was no midah. Since it's all about Isedus and Ispilus, you see these lines are critical because they give you very clear definition of a midah. Ispilus, not all the Mamorim that you always say that. So it's in a state of expression and revelation. Yeah. Sometimes it's always the vav before the ayin. Yeah? Okay. So that's why midas are used as an example not used on the contrary. That's why midas are sometimes explained or expressed as an example in the outer organs and limbs. Because if a midah is a midah is an emotional thing. Like we say, chesed derei yamina. Chesed is on the right hand. What does that have to do with the right hand? The chesed is an emotion. Would you say the mind is in the right hand? You wouldn't say that. Shehin evorim ha-built-in, why? Because shehin evorim ha-built-in v'yetz min haguf. Because these limbs are beilet. They, how do you translate beilet? Stick out. Protrude. They protrude v'yetz min haguf. And they protrude and extend out of the body. Right. Protrude and extend. Good. Same thing with midas. They are in a state of protrusion, and revelation. That's an interesting explanation. That's why you compare it to the Evarim. Huh? That's a good question. Why would you compare it to the Evarim? Midas, you could say Midas in the heart, right side of the heart, left side of the heart. Like the intelligence is in the mind is in the brain. The fact that you compare it, so it means, so we say it today later, you'll think about this. Because a midah is expression, is a protrusion and extension. Yeah, those are good words. And what do they express to? What do they reveal? Where do they protrude to? The inyan hamidus is that they're drawn to something that's beneath them. I'm not sure what this means, because you could also be drawn to godliness. Okay, let's see. The bederach klal hamidus em b'chinas shiflus b'nefesh, because in general midas are a diminished. He doesn't mean shiflus here. He means it's a inferior part of the soul, meaning it's not the soul's greatest strengths. Interesting. Because midas draw down a person from his true inner core personality. But I'm going to read what he says here, but what he's trying to say is, really, a bas eichel, it shouldn't pass him to be influenced and be excited by things that are by other things.
He's moved to something, and that itself is degradation.
Right.
Because he's moving beyond himself.
So it's a form of degradation. But let's be honest, midas are necessary for haftas Shem Elokecha. So he's talking here in a very base level here. And to act on your midas, pu'ulas hamidus, and I don't know if acting on the midas, no, the pu'ulas hamidus, the action of emotions, because now he's using a different pu'ulas hamidus, is impossible without, no, it's acting on your emotions, because you could have an emotion, and the person, let's say, could have chesed, may not have orchim to give it, to present it to, but you still have it. So pu'ulas hamidus, basically the action, the activation of the midas, the implementation. Or the expression, we said the expression. Yeah, the expression may be is impossible without another. So all this shows, meaning that their pu'ulosam, their implementation, their actualization I would use, is revealed and drawn to something. So he's twisted from every way possible. Just to sum it up, what is a midah? A midah by nature is yitziv izgalus, because it means an awakening, you're aroused to something. That's why they're compared to those evarim chitzenim, because they protrude and they express and they extend. And it's drawn to something beneath it, because on your own, and that makes it even stronger. Because you could say if a midah was just a reflection of what your essence is about, then maybe it's not a protrusion. Maybe that's what you are. So that's why you add that it's actually, it's being drawn to something that's outside of the individual. So it's a form of a lower state, a degraded state, you could say. And you cannot actualize these middas without another. By contrast now, on the other hand, intelligence, they're not naturally in a state of revelation. They're not in a form of expression and revelation. They are concealed within the individual. So number one is intelligence by definition is a concealed inward, an introverted force instead of an extroverted one. And more than adrab, on the contrary, moichin actually affect concealment in all the faculties, and the other faculties. Right. That by chsil, kol rucha yetz is like a shikar. By chsil, by a fool, everything just expresses itself. His whole spirit, everything. He says everything. Was afan lung is afan sung. V'achochem b'keiche latzer. And a chochem, what's a chochem? His power is to latzer, to stop, to withhold, restrain. Ba'atzmei ulahastir inyanov. His power is to restrain himself, within himself, and to conceal his inner interests, his matters, the matters that are inside of him. So we see that chachma, wisdom, is a concealer, is an introverted force. It draws things in, not the opposite. Which is why a Baal Midas without Meichin is going to be very excitable and very emotional and so on. A Baal Meichin by nature is the opposite. You don't know what's going on inside of him. The inyan ha-Meichin hu shemekasher esas miladover shalamayla memeno. So in contrast to Midas, where Midas are you going outside of yourself, you're excited and you're aroused by something beneath you. In Meichin is the opposite. Intelligence is the other. You attach yourself, you connect yourself to something that's above you. That's the whole idea of intelligence. To understand something that is beyond him, above him, and to attach, connect, and cleave yourself to it. And he should cleave himself to it. And here, all three things he's saying. Remember, we said three things about Midas. The nature of Midas is Yitzias Galus Meichin is his salmus within. Midas go downward, and Meichin goes above. And now the third thing. There he said Pu'ulas HaMidas is with Azulas, and Pu'ulas HaMeichin, again the word Pu'ulas, the actualization of Meichin, Ein Eluzulase, is not to another. Ki'im la'atzmei, rather to yourself, K'neid, as it's known. So all three things he just said about Midas, Meichin is the exact opposite. Well, Meichin, the Gadlus, and now he goes and adds, that's Meichin in general. Mature intelligence, which means evolved intelligence. Tivam b'bchinas ha'gadola dafka kiyudua. Their nature is more than just concealed havdalah. You actually separate yourself, as it's known. That's all Meichin, I would say. But here, havdalah means that Meichin the Gadlus, when a person's in a completely different level of Meichin, people like that are usually not. See, the first Meichin is a Baal Meichin can be also a social person. He has friends and so on. A Baal Meichin the Gadlus is usually someone that's antisocial, but he's not a social creature. He's not among. He's not going to be in a different place. You like that?
I like because we're learning the same thing. Second Sefirah.
Okay.
About the Kav and Soy. That has to come from Das.
Okay. So anyway, all this is an example. If you remember, it began with an example, Maderech Moshel Keches HaNefesh, to understand Eiris compared to Kelim. Because we're talking about the Kelim are the revelatory force. And the Eiris, by nature, are Histalkus Lamaila. So this was an example, and now he's concluding the example and saying, so we see from all of this, that everything that is a higher, meaning higher, more sublime, more qualitative energy. So the higher the energy state, the more the Yesod Tiva b'chinas Salmas Valiyah. Its nature is more of concealment and ascension. Aliyah. And the same thing is with what's Lamaila. The nature of energy, divine energy, Lamaila, is its nature is to ascend and to expire, meaning to go upward. Now he adds a qualification in the parentheses. And this example of mind. No, because till now he's talking let's say Eir HaKeches. L'mayla he's talking Eiris Elyenim. He's talking Atzilus and beyond. Yeah. Because Zola Moshel, that's how he started. Derech Moshel. So he said that already. Look at the line before. And teva, and the same thing is an example. Eir l'mayla. Eir l'mayla is not a flame. That's the whole point. It's an example to understand Eir l'mayla. The yidz the kamoshel the meichen midas al eres v'kelim. And the yidz the kamoshel. How do we translate that? And it's appropriate. It's a fitting. The yidzdek. It's a good match.
This mashal do the justice.
Yeah, it does justice. The mashal, the example of meichen midas, does justice on energies and containers. Because before it was just a mashal to explain how air goes upward, and kelim go downward, motions. So he says this does justice to energies and containers. Lefi masha pirish be'etz chaim, according to what it says in Eitz Chaim, dechayu b'chinas hamechen, v'gamui b'chinas hakelim. You may recall that there's two different interpretations. We learned it earlier. So in Eitz Chaim, chayu is mechen, is intelligence, and gamui is kelim. I think he means to say midas. That's what he wants to say. Chayu is meichen and gamu is midas. But okay, he says kelim.
Yeah, it's like a should fix because it says further. Look further. You'll see.
I know. Mavur b'mokam achad, and it said and explained elsewhere the gamash apirish rabbeinu zal in Geras HaKodesh. The chayu who b'chinas and eres v'gamu kelim has a master in mashakos b'etz chaim. Ki amoichin ikram b'chinas er midas ikram b'chinas kelim. Yeah, but pashtus it should say midas here, but not completely, because it does sometimes discuss it, and it says that the midas are kelim. That's what he's saying here. Yeah. Anyway, the point is like this. So it says that elsewhere it reconciles. Because in Geras HaKodesh he says chayui iyu v'chayu echad, that's energies, and gamuya kentelim, and this is consistent, masim, reconcilable with what it says in Eitz Chaim. Why? Because intelligence is primarily energy, and midas is primarily kelim. Let's go back to where he said this earlier, and I want to just see how it's written there. It's page 19 if you want to look. Is it 19? 1 second, maybe I made a mistake. No, my mistake. Page 9. Page 9, not 19. Page 9. So on top he says, yeah, clearly. See it?
No, page
9. Yeah. 5 lines, 6 lines from the top. But Geras HaKodesh, chayu er v'gamur b'chinas hakelim. That the daheim did mechen gam hakelim hem b'chinas chayu. Yeah, okay. But pashtus he means midas. Daheim did mechen gam hakelim b'chinas chayu.
No, because that's from Geras HaKodesh just Rabbeinu.
Yeah. What do you mean? I'm talking about the first, the Eitz Chaim is midas. Meichen and midas. Chayu v'gamui are meichen and midas. I just want to say something. The only reason he's saying maybe kelim because in the tivuch, in the reconciliation, he's saying because meichen primarily, even the kelim are like energies. And in the midas, even the energies are like kelim. But technically, it should be saying midas here. Fine. So here we go. So the mashal, therefore, is more appropriate than it's not just an example, because based on the Eitz Chaim, there's actually this is divine intelligence and midas. Okay, fine. And this is the meaning what it says. That God is like the fire that consumes. The pasuk Eish Eichla consumes what? Like it consumes on the Mizbeach? Okay. So this is the comparison of Hashem to a fire. The fact that you're comparing the divine to an Eish. Why? Because like an Eish, fire, nature of fire is that it's drawn upward, and to be consumed in Eish HaYesedi, in the source of all Eish, in the archetype of fire.
That's the stalkers.
Yeah.
According to the Rambam, it's under the Yerech.
And this is because of its subtlety, its edelkeit. That's why it has the nature of elevation. A grubber thing, something that is crass and coarse, is falls downward. The kol yesedis hem chumrim, because all the yesedis, the elements, in general, the four elements we talk about: eish, ruach, mayim, ofer. So you have mayim and it goes back. The lowest, of course, is ofer, earth. Then you have water. Then you have wind. And then you have eish. So all this yesedis are chumrim. They're very tangible, concrete, coarse. U'mishum zeh yesh behem teva yirida lamata. And because of their chumrius here doesn't necessarily mean grobkeit in the sense like we say in Avodah. You say someone's a chumrius, he's into taivus or he's into very lowly things. Chumrius here means very. There's a word for it when you say something is like covered. Very physical, but Eish is also physical. Everything's physical. They're like heavy, earthy.
I think they're made out of physical matter.
Chumri means more than just physical gashmi. It means a certain grobkeit, but not in verbringen grobkeit. Certain. And that's why their nature is downward, fall downward. The contrast, fire, it's a very subtle and spiritual entity.
The other ones are
more tangible, huh?
The other ones
go down. Yeah. And therefore, it's in the kiruv erech. It's more commensurate and closer relationship with its source.
It's like Oros one.
What I say? Huh? As if we would say that it actually senses its source. In other words, it doesn't actually physically, consciously sense it, but because of its similarity, when something is more edel, more refined, more subtle, it's similar to its source. So it's as if to say that it feels its source.
The muscle for Oros.
Yeah. We're in the middle of this. Yeah. Why are you asking that?
Right, we're going to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah. That's why it has a nature to elevate and ascend and to be included and be encompassed, to be engulfed in its root and in its source. So that's the case. Why doesn't fire go there? Because when there's something that's holding on to it, like a wick, that's dover hanechas, that contains it.
It's like a cable.
We're still on the same page. We didn't change pages. Why are you? That's obvious. I'm saying, why are you? Why would you think otherwise? Huh? Like a sheyesh dover hanechas, except when there's something a thing that contains it, like oil and a wick. Harihem nechas behem, harihu nechas behem. The fire is contained by them, in them, behem lamata. It's contained in them below. So the fire on its own is an elevating state, but the wick, the fuel and the wick, contain it downward, keep it downward, ground it. The hainu kishiyesh dover hamekabel esaish, which means when there's something receiving the flame. And it is mispar memenu. It's affected by it. Because you could have, let's say, if it's a wick, like a piece of metal, won't have that effect. It has something that is receptive to it. It's receptive in the sense that it's getting burned up and consumed by Eish in the fire. In other words, it's almost like, we'll learn this later. We learned it later. The keli has to reach to the air. The keli has to be commensurate to the air for the air to speak back to it. So it's like it's seducing it, because it's... So the air on its own is similar to its source, and therefore would ascend. The keli, the wick, and the oil and the fuel contain it and are affected by it. So they're both receptive to it, receptive to the flame, and are affected by it. That they get burned, and they are the keli to it, basically. They wouldn't be a keli where they wouldn't draw down the air. That's the bottom line. It would be like a student that's not receptive to a teacher. The teacher wouldn't be able to communicate with him, wouldn't want to, and wouldn't be interested, and wouldn't be able to. But even then, it's not like the flame suddenly changes its personality. Even then, it doesn't rest in the wick. It's constantly flickering. Lamaila. It's constantly flickering and moving toward above, reaching upwards, licking the sky, licking the air. She'era eish chofetz beteva lifrid ma'psila, because the eish desires by nature to separate itself from the wick, ulidvag b'shar shelamayla, and cleave to its root above, b'yeseda eish hakloli, in the core archetypal root of fire. Like he says in Tanya, chapter 19, where he speaks about neshama, ner Hashem nishmas adam. So he says exactly that. Teva eish is to go upward, and that's why also soul is drawn upward, transcendent. This is all an example. The same thing is an example. The example to air lamaila. This is an example from below. Being that this light, this energy above, is only a reflection. Because the essence, the core, source, does not transmit and does not extend, does not express. It's only a reflection of it that we experience. He needs to say this, because you could say, one second, maybe if Ayed has its own personality, then who says it's this? He needs to say that it's like Aish. In other words, it's only a reflection of something above it, so it's connected to that thing. And therefore, and being that the Ayed, which is only a reflection, is cleaves and is attached to its source, that's the whole personality of Ayed. Everything about Ayed, what is it? That it is essentially an agent of its source. It's an expression of its source. And it's attached to its source. See there he said, Ki'ilu Neimer. He says, and here, and actually senses its source. That's why this Ayed Lamaila is in a state of ascension and expiration toward its source, in its source. And it does not want, it's not in a state of being descending and transmitting downward. Because through that he goes distant from his source. Why would he do that? His entire desire, his entire yearning, his entire chukka hunger, his entire desire is to be encompassed and engulfed in the Bimkede, in his source. As we will discuss later at length. And it's only through the containers, because they are something that the energy is contained by them and is held by them. The energy is contained by them. Through this specifically, the energy descends and is drawn, expressed, and transmits downward. So that sums up. All this is explaining the Paradis in Misaprim. Now what? He wanted to say that we're talking about that Sefirah tell the story of something that's concealed. So all this was an explanation. Why is it concealed? Because Eir on its own are not in a state of hamshacha and gilui, like machshava. So it's a machshava nelama. It'll be the kelim that reveal it, like someone tells a story of something that's going on within. Like dibur, or writing, tells something that was there in a concealed state. But he's still, obviously, in the middle of the discussion. I see that this discussion goes on and on for a while. And I think maybe through this whole mimer. So it's now discussing the nature of energy and container. And this is obviously a continuation of everything he's been speaking in the previous mimer, also about energies and containers in the context of number. Now we're talking about it in the context of concealed and revealed and going upward and downward. So it's another dimension of energies and containers. Okay, we'll stop here. So we did chapter 91, page 175. Huh? Oh, the kitzur. Let me do the kitzur. 1 second. Don't stop. Don't. Kitzur summary. Pirush habeis b'sfiris merab Shem Tev. The second interpretation, meaning in Sefirah, was from Rab Shem Tev. Loshen sippur, from the word sippur, story. Shem megalas hamachshavas hanelamas, that they reveal the hidden thoughts. Because of a part of Shem esapris hamagbilas habiltigvul. And the Pardes writes that they relate and confine or limit, confine. Misapris is relate, and Magbilis, I would say confine, channel, maybe channel the bilti mugbul, that which is unlimited. Like speech that reveals the thought. Same thing, containers reveal the energy. Because without the container, the nature of Ayir on its own, energy on its own, is to ascend. Because every faculty and energy, higher energy, is in a state of ascension, is a state of going upward. Like intelligence and emotions. Midas are a revelation, an expression, being drawn to something beneath it. And seichel is elevation and cleaving to something above it. Like the nature of fire, to elevate because of its closeness, because it senses its closeness to its source.
It's interesting that Midas and Mechel uses different words. For Midas he uses Amshacha l'Davar Shalom Meno, and for
yeah, he says
he uses Amshacha l'Davar Shalom Meno.
But he does say B'davar Shalom Meno.
Then Amshacha uses the word Advekus.
Yeah, because it's
Midas he uses the word Amshacha.
Yeah, because Amshacha is like you read it. The same thing, being a reflection that's cleaved, that's connected to its source. It's in a state of elevation and expiration. And through the containers, it descends and is transmitted and drawn downward. So we did chapter 91, page 175.